Tony's had a lot of experiences and can talk on a wide range of subjects. So, welcome, Tony.
Oh, hello, Irene, and how are you? Are you all right, Miss Bond?
Yes, I am.
It's the paranormal Jason Bourne here. So,
Yeah. I'm Miss Bond. He's Jason Bourne.
Jason Bourne, the paranormal Jason Bourne. You look tired, Irene, and then we play the theme music, don't we, when we're looking over the... You remember that famous sequence where he says, you look tired. I've forgotten the name, that woman. You look tired. He was looking at her through his thing, wasn't it? But I suppose, that mindset is prevalent in our game, really, of what we do. I don't know why I started like that. I just felt it came to mind.
Well, there is a new Jason Bourne movie coming out this year. Looks pretty good.
Yeah. He's a man after my own heart, because I know what it's like to have been exposed to some of these disgraceful, undemocratic, classified special access projects that go on with some very advanced technologies in the pursuit of understanding kind of like UFOs at the cost of citizens' liberty. And it's, I think Eisenhower was on track with it. I think he knew what was going on. Corrupt to the core. I digress. Sorry, I'm on my soapbox. I just find it just sprung to mind. Then there's that when you're being stalked, Mark, and you've had phone calls and you've had all kinds of wackos following you. You kind of like it gets a bit Jason Bourne mindset. It really does. It's very strange. And I've had my share of very strange people as well over the past couple of weeks come my way, pertaining to know my experiences, and you just smile and wave and let them talk. And it's quite embarrassing when they realise that they don't know what's going on with your own experiences. I'm sorry, I'm just ranting on here, just what I feel at the moment.
Well, that's okay, Tony. Don't hold back. Just tell it like it is.
Back, all right. Yes, that's where it's been absolutely hair-raising couple of weeks with footage being taken. And if your listeners don't know who I am, I'm kind of like had paranormal experiences since the age of 2. I've had UFOs coming in over my house, and I've been followed by a goon squad, shall we say, who seemed to know a bit more than I did about my UFO encounters and would follow me, which was the most bizarre thing, Mark. But I think the thing to bear in mind is, it's not what you know, it's what we can prove. So we prove that this is all in the land of make-believe. We prove that the guy speaking now is an attention-seeking narcissist. We prove all that kind of thing, while we know behind the scenes real stuff goes on with all this. And contactees in the UK especially are closely monitored. I do believe, in my humble opinion. I'll throw that out to you, but that's how I'm feeling tonight, really. It's been quite stressful. It can get quite stressful as well when you're dealing with the UFO situation. The public don't seem to notice, not that they don't care, it's just that they don't notice what really goes on behind the scenes with all this. And it can be absolutely hair-raising.
So, Tony, you've had some more UFOs going over your house recently?
What we've had is, I'd call it a plasma intelligent UFO. And I would say it kept zoning in on my ham radio antenna. It's done it twice now. I'm a licensed radio ham, and I've got a HF radio antenna for high frequency operation in the in the 3.5 megahertz to 28 megahertz range that I'm licensed to use. And it's quite a good antenna. It's known as a Comet HF antenna. They're quite expensive pieces again. And this UFO, one particular evening, as they do, came in over the house and just passed through this antenna like a ghost. It kind of like morphed itself and just passed through it, literally passed through it. And my friend Jason did some imagery analysis on it to discover that the thing had indeed literally done this bizarre optical kind of stunt where it had shrunk itself, morphed itself, and then flown through it and out again, displaying an intelligence and a technology base that's pretty advanced to the trained eye. But of course, as what the Daily Express journalists notice, it's all camera shake, it's all funny lights, it's all meteors, it's all anything but what it actually is. And that happened with the Daily Express as well, where we got a game of gotcha journalism going on with a journalist at the Daily Express. Sent me some images and said to me, Tony, are these aliens? And I said, well, look, they were shown around Canary Wharf, actually, guys and girls. So I said, I'll take a look. I said, yes, I believe they're non-human intelligent. I've been having repeated dreams of Canary Wharf, this, that, and the other. And they were actually aircraft on approach to London City Airport, so he said. And they did it quite on purpose. And it's kind of disappointing with the media when they're going down this gotcha journalism type kind of format, trying to catch researchers out, which I find tragic, really, in the grand scheme of things.
But Tony, is that a plane route there over Canary Wharf? Is it one of the routes they take?
He'd done a gotcha journalism on us. So what he'd done is he'd sent us these images, knowing that it was, I didn't know, implying the media spin of, aren't they all fruitcakes? They don't know what they're talking about.
Oh, he was trying to catch you out. He was trying to trick you.
Tony? He was. Fairness to the guy, he quoted every word I said without my response to him, without editing it. And my response to him was quite interesting, high-grade information that I was passing about it, or about the fact that I thought it was UFOs because the Indian press said this. Project Condign, which was the MOD's Project Condign, the MOD did a load of research into UFOs. They came up with the term UAP, anomalous aerial phenomena, and they indicated that a lot of it was plasma, caused by plasma.
Now, Tony, you have been seeing UFOs and having these experiences for years and years.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, are you still experiencing what you call the torture, where they're trying to interfere with you and mess with your head?
Yes, I am. And it is Mark. How can I put it? This is very real, is all this. Now, I suppose the question has to be asked, and we'd be daft not to asking it, is somebody using high-tech military mind-invasive technology the equivalent that is very advanced, and are they testing it on me? Because some of the visions I have of these UFOs and the occupants in them are pretty vivid, and I mean pretty shockingly vivid. But the other situation is, of course, the UFOs that are coming in over my house are displaying flight characteristics of something under intelligent control, and we've got the analysis of one particular piece of footage, for example, of a UFO doing a flight maneuver, a flight aerodynamic maneuver around another object that would be impossible for a normal aircraft to do. So we've got kind of like we're backed up with all this image analysis. Last year, I think on December the 18th, about 3 in the morning, I was threatened, and that was very serious, really, a very serious situation to be in. It really, really came for me. It meant what it said. I'm lucky to still be alive, because there is esoteric forces at work that do not want humanity to know of this. They do not want humanity to know that we are not alone. But you know, any esoteric force that comes your way doing all that hissing and spitting, it's like similar to a camera observing and taking hundreds of photos of what it's looking at. It's just a bizarre gift and ability that I have. And not many people, Mark, are going to want to understand it. But for your listeners who are fascinated by this, it was the equivalent to the Devil's Advocate movie, where Keanu Reeves is stood there and Al Pacino reveals who he is, and it was that kind of incident that happened. Because I'm kind of like got this unique ability to kind of like see things, understand things that others seemingly can't. In the sense of UFOs, I know when they're over the house, I know what they're doing. I seem to know the landscape of them all. And there you go, really. I think you get in serious trouble when you start going down the route of I'm the chosen one here to herald the Space Brothers message and all that malarkey, to coin the British phrase. I think you can get into serious bother when you start going down that route as well.
Tony, hiya. How are you?
I'm all right, Neil. How are you, mate?
Good. I'm fine, thank you. I was going to ask you about I did some artwork recently for you of a vision or something you had. Now it was a futuristic kind of vision of a UFO making an appearance over San Francisco Bay, I believe, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah. So obviously I did the artwork for Tony to do a presentation at some point in Photoshop and things, and we kind of discussed what he had seen. Can you explain to us how that vision came about and basically what was the reason behind it?
Well done, Neil. A good question, mate. Because I'll rant on forevermore like the Duracell bunny. Yeah. What happened there, Neil, was how can I put it into words? I've got some journals that began probably in about 2000 to the current date of the most bizarre and strangest goings on and interactions and bizarre sound effects, interactions with UFOs that were beyond my comprehension, that I could not understand. It led me to believe along my experiences, as I developed with what I was understanding, what is kept out of the public domain, well, not kept out of the public domain, but what is kept hush, is the fact that UFOs, the psychic espionage, the psychic elements of UFOs communicate in a continuum, a space-time continuum. And what will happen is that in the continuum, local time becomes a singularity. Time as we know it collapses. You don't have the year 2016. You could have the year 2016, 21, 48, 26, 21, all merging into one great big kind of. If your listeners aren't familiar with cellular phone technology, with me being into radio communication, there's also a system as well called DMR, what we ham radios do. What happens is you can have one single frequency with multiple users on it. I think a cell phone transmitter can have one frequency, but can have 25 users slotting in and out of this frequency. If you imagine the time continuum being like a cell phone transmitter frequency, and the slots, the users being segments in time, slotting in, slotting out, slotting in, slotting out, that is the scenario that began to develop in my understanding of my UFO psychic element contact experiences. Now, why I say this, because it's not something I've made up, it's something that they have told me. And this in turn creates something that the ETs call, or the people in the UFOs call, the Yazmat paradox, or Yazmat. Yazmat meaning that your work, Mark, and your work, Irene, and my work, all shapes the future because of. It's Sanskrit for because of. And I looked that up on the internet. Now, what can happen is with me, and what has happened, is that has taken kind of leverage and traction. So all this work that we're doing now is heard further down the history line and creates a bizarre time paradox where we have this continuum going in time where different users slot in, slot out, slot in, slot out, 2116, 2238, slotting in, slotting out of time continuum to try and catch a glimpse of those who are in the UFOs whose technology base is hundreds of years ahead of us. And that is the scenario that I have worked out that has been occurring with me, which has taken nearly 18 years to understand or thereabouts what is going on.
Tony, yeah. let me ask, just so I understand. You're saying that our military or our governments are utilizing this technology of looking through these different time periods in order to better understand who is in these UFOs and who's controlling them?
Yeah, what's happening, Mark? You're on the right lines, Mark. What's happening, Mark, is this. Yes, that as well. Yeah, you're quite right, Mark. That's a drifted. But what Neil's talking about is what I would call in my lectures, they changed from these drawings that I did, which I couldn't understand, which appeared to be. What appeared to be happening is the UFOs appear to be coming in over my house, and they appear to be speaking to somebody, but not me, but through me. And I'm thinking, who the hell are they speaking to? I'm a go-between here. And what we're talking about, what Neil's drawing is all about, is what that go-between is, that party, those individuals who communicate with the UFOs, whereabouts are they on the time slot and what do they communicate? And so what Neil did is he did this tremendous drawing of a communication by that party to me within the time continuum of a UFO incident that's not yet happened but will in Earth's future. It's mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing because it's at that point in our future that we begin to grasp their scientific understanding, their science kind of thing. It's perhaps dangerous territory to go down, but that basically is the gist of it. And I won't maybe go any further with it because it's not really safe to talk about. But that's basically in the public domain. What I'm saying is basically in the public domain. And so that appears to be what is going on. Why it happened, I don't know. So I know the who, the what, the when, but nobody is telling me why. I had one guy fly out from New York to Germany, from Germany to Heathrow, from Heathrow up to York in the UK to spend 90 minutes with me in a pub to question me about UFOs, and then he flew back to New York the next day. That happened this year. So it kind of like, there is activity going on over the skies of this town, for example. The UFOs are present. The technology base is very advanced, and I think, of course, governments would want a piece of that action. They'd want a piece of that technology base. I do believe, and it's kind of, but that's basically kind of what appears to be going on. Either that or the ganja I'm smoking is excellent.
Do you got any more? Send some our way. We can have some of those experiences. Now, I was just trying to ask about the different factions that are supposedly doing all this experimentation, and you're looking into. I mean, what do you think their end game is? What are they trying to achieve? And are we, as the public, in any danger?
That's a good question, Mark. Are we, as the public, in any danger? We're a danger. The human race is actually a danger to itself, and has been manipulated quite easily by esoteric forces. It is interesting to know of Alec Newald. I don't know whether you can get him as a guest on your show. Alec in New Zealand. The story of Alec Newald goes something like this. Have you guys heard of Alec Newald?
I'm not familiar with him.
No, neither am I.
So you're not familiar. Alec's written a book via Nexus magazine. You must have him as a guest, called Co-Evolution. He's one of these guys who's had contact with UFOs in the unorthodox way that I've had contact with UFOs, whereby what you see on the internet about them, what's written about them, what people read about, is totally removed from real life and real life goings on with them. It's totally removed. It's totally different, I think is the word I'm looking for. Alec was driving down the road from Auckland to New Zealand. He was in New Zealand. He was driving to Auckland, and he went missing for 10 days. 10 days later, I think he's 20 miles from where he should be. He's disorientated, and 10 days have passed. He doesn't know what the hell's gone on. And it turns out that he had an alien abduction incident happen to him. He said that before he died, but he had two ghost-like figures coming towards him, which turned out not to be ghosts, but they were in fact aliens of an advanced technological culture. And they took him away aboard their craft, and they wanted to see if they could integrate with him. They wanted to see if they could replicate with him, mate with him, all that kind of thing. What is interesting to note is that he got a knock on the door he claims, by the way, he got a knock at the door from the Royal Institute of International Affairs, which is interesting. I'll come to that. And also the Australian Defence Research Agency. They wanted to confiscate his car because it had been submitted to high electrical voltage. He was baffled as to how they knew this, but he refused to cooperate, and so they chucked him in prison. So the story goes. What is interesting, Mark, leading up to your question, is one of these ETs turned around to him and said that the Earth is ruled by a dark force. It is a form of life that should be respected. And that sentence in the whole book is a very, very accurate portrayal of what is going on behind the scenes, because these people in the UFOs are aware of that. If you look, as I've said in the public domain, if you look at the two global conflicts of World War I and World War II, we see a goal. We see, if it was a football match, we see a net move, but we don't see the root cause. And the root cause is possible.
Get the impression when we're talking about UFOs, and more recently, I suppose, is that people on the general public kind of think aliens is us and them, but it seems like a whole minefield, because I think it was recently quoted by Paul Hellyer that there's at least something like in the order of 60 or 70 species that he believes is coming here, and they're all coming here for different reasons, and so you're going to get the good guys and the bad guys, and it's rather like people go on a safari to Africa. Some are out there hunting the animals, and some just want to photograph and enjoy the trip, and that's the kind of the impression I'm getting with these visitors to our earthly shores.
I think it's a bit deeper than that, Neil. I can't seem to grasp the why this is happening to me. I cannot seem to. I've got all the other components apart from why. Nobody is saying why. even the goon squad who targeted me, who knew why before I did, won't be saying why at all. It's quite sinister to know that you've got a party of people on Earth, on this current time frame of the now kind of thing, who stalked me for a number of years in the past, who knew why I was having all this going on before I did, which I find a bit sinister. So you kind of like, you just don't know why, but there's a deeper reason for them turning up than what we think. They never do anything without reason. What I will say is there's some serious ethical questions to be asked over their intrusive behavior into the lives of UFO contactees, who David Griffin coined the phrase contactivism. I think it's pronounced contactivism. It's kind of like the intrusiveness of it, the ethics of it, the creepiness of them. It's not it's all very nice to come over in their high-tech UFOs and all that, and I've seen them firsthand what they look like, but we don't know why. And the same with Alec Newwald, they tend to walk into somebody's life, walk out again. You don't know why, and you're left to pick up the pieces, and you're exposed to all kinds of things as well. And it's enough to make a man turn to religion, frankly, because you're exposed to the most craziest of goings on, and you don't know why. And I know I'm repeating myself, but the frustration is nobody is telling you why either.
But Tony, didn't you mention in one of your talks for our group that in your earlier years, before you started having the UFO experiences, you'd had paranormal occurrences when you was a child?
Yeah, they're linked to the UFO. You're right, Neil, but they're actually linked to the UFO phenomena. Oddly enough, the paranormal experiences that I had in early childhood are linked to incidents with UFOs in 2014, when they've been tracking me probably since the age of 2 years. And so what was happening was these kind of people who are in another dimension, in a reverse world to ours, whose technology base is a little different, are watched with considerable interest, despite the public denial of all this. They're watched with considerable interest. The technology, it's all about the technology that they're using. He never really talks about it. He wasn't a nice man at all. He had exceptional abilities to heal people, as well as blow up things, and he was gifted. For example, Neil, as I've said in my talks, if I was naughty, he wouldn't need to slap me. He'd just lay me out sparkle on the bed with a headache. And the thing is that he had the gift of whatever it was he had, and he was approached. And I have reason to suspect that he may have been targeted as well by the strange goings on that had been happening. There's a possibility, and it can't be ruled out. Is there any positives from this conversation? I believe there is, because I know that Colonel Philip Corso said that when he had interactions with aliens, Colonel Corso, who your listeners don't know, Philip Corso, he was the Roswell. He was at Roswell, and he's claimed in his book the day after Roswell that that some of that technology is now integrated into our mainstream society that was recovered from a UFO in Roswell. And he persistently and constantly said that the secrecy issue was a problem. And this technology, it was a future if we could handle it. That's the thing, a future if we could handle it. And that brings me on to some of the extraordinary visions I had last year during the height of the Ukraine crisis, where I had a UFO incident and a vision, which I think it was the artist Lloyd Canning who brought that to life, Neil, you know. So I hope, please jump in, guys. I hope you don't think I'm waffling, but I just feel very strongly, perhaps since I last talked to you, I continue to evolve on a weekly basis with my material. I just continue to just thunder on with my understanding of what is going on, and it's not easy.
We talked about the futuristic visitations of UFOs to come and things like that. And what that reminded me a little bit of was, I know that Rendlesham's probably been talked to death over the years, but it's one of those things like Roswell, you still like to revisit it with fresh perspectives sometimes. And one of the things I heard about Rendlesham in more recent years was that there was speculation that the craft at Rendlesham was actually from our future, possibly humans or a human type of being from the future, and wondered maybe if something like the experiences you're having and others similar to yourself is, visitors from the future rather than from typically outer space, if you want to call it that?
Yes, Neil. And bizarre as it may seem, I've got to be careful what I say because I can create paradox. I can make the going very heavy for myself. This may sound bizarre, but it's like writing a script. There's the Wingmakers site. I highly recommend the site, the Wingmakers site. A lot of people said it was a fraud at wingmakers.com, all about time-traveling humans, called the Wingmakers from another century within the human time frame. And what can happen for a contactee who's having interactions with UFOs and they're the real deal is that you can have this problem of this, what you're talking about, Neil, of human beings from future causing problems because they still don't understand what is going on themselves. They can get the wrong end of the stick, and it can cause problems for the contactee. This is the ethical kind of issues that the contactees of UFOs, who are the real deal and aren't really saying much in public about it, can be exposed to, and the ethics of it are absolutely disgusting because these beings in the UFOs know what they're being exposed to, but make no effort, it appears, to assist or help in any way ease the suffering of what they've been exposed to. It's a disgusting ethical carry-on as far as I'm concerned, based on my own experiences. But we're talking at a level, Neil, of advanced UFO contact that the books didn't write about. Billy Meyer maybe didn't comment on, but it can happen. It certainly can happen. Yeah.
It reminds me, again, I've read or seen some videos, I can't remember which now, something about Operation Looking Glass. I don't know if any...
Yes.
Yeah, you heard of that? It's something to do with UFOs and going back in time or something like that. I mean, can you expand upon that?
That's the Dan Burlish one, isn't it, of Operation Looking Glass. I just have to look that up, Neil, just to refresh my memory of what that is. But what you're basically talking about is the fact that... some party, a third party, has twigged that the research to do with UFOs communicating in space-time continuum environment, similar to a cellular phone slotting kind of technique, is correct. And what they do is they venture out to get that information, but they haven't twigged it yet, but they will in the future, you see. Hence the Yazmat paradox, where we create this future. And what happens is that what is fascinating about that is that the UFOs, no governments, we've got Steve Bassett, who does tremendous work with his UFO disclosure stuff, screaming from the rooftops, the Clinton campaign, about UFO disclosure. The US government isn't planning to disclose anything at all. It's lockdown, as are world governments. It's lockdown on it. So what is happening is we're getting an extraordinary process of, it doesn't matter how long it takes, but we're getting an extraordinary process of these UFOs disclosing information to members of the public. It could be you, Neil. It could be Irene. It could be me. It just happens to be, it appears I get the royal treatment. But this appears to be what's going on. At the moment, it would appear our scientific base would not be able to grasp, for example, the technology of the blonde, blue-eyed people that are known as Nordic. They would not be able to quite grasp their technology at all. It would be completely beyond them. But in years ahead down the line, as humanity progresses and advances, these beings kind of like disclose information that assist us. And that appears to be, that was reflected in a NASA scientist who gave an interview to Whitley Strieber on Unknown Country. This guy, he actually exists. He's a proper NASA scientist. A member of his family emailed me to say, yeah, it's Dr. So-and-so who worked at such and such an establishment. Look him up. Sure enough, there he was. And what happened to Dr. E, I shall call him, is that he woke up in his bedroom to discover aliens in his room doing a star map, precise star map of where they were. Oddly enough, that hasn't happened to me. That hasn't happened to me where we've got the star map and they're telling me precisely where they come from, which I find odd. That's not happened to me. That I find odd. But what he was saying was that he was working on propulsion calculations that he couldn't quite get his head around. These propulsion calculations were to develop something called ballistic capture in spacecraft, where spacecraft would swing into orbit via the planetary pull and all this kind of thing. And he reckons on this Whitley Strieber interview that he gave that these UFO interactions influenced him in getting these calculations absolutely spot on, and therefore, because of that, it has revolutionised the way craft land on things, the way spacecraft land on planets and on meteors, and whatever it was. There's been some big developments in that due to its encounters, but he couldn't go mainstream public. He just couldn't go mainstream public about it. His career, his scientific career, would be over. He is out there on the internet. He's done a lot of good work, but he couldn't go public. Similarly, there's a guy I know who's the head of a multi-million-pound company, a chief executive who's had a UFO contact, comes up to me in the pub. He can't go public with it. He tells me about his experience. He thanks me very much. It goes on his way. And the thing with that, I suppose, I'm on my soapbox here, is I salute people like that. I suppose you, Irene, I don't know so much. Maybe you, Neil, and maybe Mark can maybe just switch off and go about their daily lives. Somebody like me, it's 24/7, 365 days a year. We can never seem to switch off nor leave it alone. It finds you. It's like water. It just follows you and finds you. This circus that you become involved in with the UFOs in real life, It does.
When you meet other kind of people at conferences and things like that, do you find that there's parallels with your experiences to theirs, or do they have very different?
They'll have very different ones. In some cases, you'll have a situation called black ops posing or waltzing. There's actually an internet site done by the Army called ARS, Army Rumour Service, where they have waltz hunters. These are professional people who go after people who claim they've been in the armed forces, and they're called waltz, as in Walter Mitty, and they do waltz hunting. It's quite funny. And so you get this scenario of spies, lies, and wannabes, whereby you'll have a guy who's black ops posing. He says he's black ops this, he's done that, he's done the other. And he doesn't know what he's talking about. But you just stay silent and smile and wave. And it reveals quite a lot if you stay quiet as to what those person's experiences are. And there'll be kind of like markers in the conversation or references that they might come up with that would mean that they're having similar experiences to yourself. So in a lot of cases, no. But in a small minority of cases, yes, that can happen where some people are having kind of similar. There's a guy in Sweden, Carl, who used to work on aircraft, who's having interaction with UFOs who he believes are of the blonde, blue-eyed people type, the Nordics. He believes he's having interaction with them. He's been a very useful cross-correlation because he's come out. I didn't prompt him. He's just come out with a load of stuff that seems to be relevant to what I'm going through as well. So there's a parallel going on. And you will get people in groups who will quietly come up to you and say, look, this is happening and all that kind of thing. And it draws a parallel. If you listen to the astronauts, the cosmonauts, the Russian cosmonauts, their encounters with UFOs, very interesting to look at. There are parallels because it's going on, you see, Neil. It's going on. It's the real thing.
Right. So when you talk about the Walter Mitty types, and they're claiming to be in the forces or ex-forces and things like that, I mean, these are just people you meet at a conference or an event of some kind.
Yeah, I get, believe it or not, Neil, I get fantasist emails from people claiming to work for the government. It's bizarre, to all, but I get fantasist emails from people claiming to work for the government. They come out with all this BS about what's going on, what isn't going on. I'm involved in this, that, and the other, and it's utter BS. It bears no resemblance.
If you work for the government, you very rarely say what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, what is interesting, Irene, is that I was at a conference, and a very charming lady walked up to me, and she said that she worked for the government. She said she could have stood there and said what I said. However, she said she knows what getting heat is all about, and she worked in the civil service. She didn't want to say too much, but she said what concerned them very deeply. I work for a government department, she said, that investigated paranormal goings-on, she told me. And what she was concerned about and what her team was concerned about was cattle mutilations. It bothered them a great deal. And she said, keep up the good work, and I bid you farewell, and off she went. And that's all you'll get out of them. We'll just get the bare minimum, and even then it can be very vague.
So is that department still looking into all this then? Cattle mutilations?
Oh, it will be, Eileen. It'll be closely.
Would that be the Department of Agriculture, perhaps?
I think it will be the Air Force, personally. Right, okay. I think the RAF take a very, very keen interest in the UFO situation over the UK and its associated components, because they're the guys who've got all the imagery analysis They've got the best intelligence gathering. They're known for their intelligence gathering.
Signets and things.
Yeah, they'll be making a very sober assessment. As to, for example, in 2014, I had these most bizarre visions of triangular craft in my sleep. I'm in this bizarre scenario when I know when they're coming over house when I'm asleep. I know when they're here. I filmed them long enough now, and I know when they're coming over the house and they say hello and go back again. And we've had this bizarre kind of thing happen where they indicated to these blonde, blue-eyed people in these triangle craft that they would appear in a field near me, and they made it very clear that that's what their intention was. Whether they will or not, I don't know. You see, there's always this thing at the back of my mind: is somebody lacking with mind control with me? Is this for real? Well, we'll only know that when I film something, but you've got to have that in the back of your mind, maybe just to keep saying, or maybe I sometimes wonder, and you guys have patiently listened to me for the past hour now, and you've got to wonder you couldn't make it up. But what happened was this vision that I had was to do with, it was Ukraine, and these blonde blue-eyeds turned up as I was asleep over the house. I knew it was them. Very clear, unmistakable look of the blonde blue-eyed kind of what they looked like. They showed two clocks. One was at 1:45, the other was at 5:45. And they were warning somebody. They were speaking to somebody. It was most bizarre. But all indications indicated that it was happening. These craft were going to turn up in a field near me. And ever since then, the Air Force have paid very close attention to that field. A Hercules jet, Hercules transporter aircraft of the Joint Special Forces wing circled my house 14 times.
That's the one I saw, wasn't it? Mm.
In fact, that's the one you and Mark investigated, wasn't it?
Yeah.
To think of it, and they were paying close attention to that field. All of a sudden, you get kind of like this notice to airmen on the UK aviation site to say big military exercise in this area, Typhoons, Hercules jets, the full Monty, all in that field, all in that area. And you know that the thing with it is why do they piss about in that way? Why can't they just land at an airbase and have a chat with them? Why all this? Honest to God, it just drives me. Why? Why do we have to have all this mucking around? If they're here and if they're real, can they just get on with it and turn it? Oh, could you imagine? I suppose I don't know what chaos that would cause if one of these triangles from a blonde, blue-eyed race just suddenly touched down at an airfield in the UK, a military airbase. I just don't know what the reaction would be. They'd probably think they were being invaded. But one wonders at the Occam's razor level why they don't just liaise with them full stop. And that's because there's a lot of secrecy, there's a lot of cover-up going on, and it all has its remnants in World War II, where the Nazis took over America's technological base of the paperclip. And that appears to be where the rub is with the UFO cover-up, as far as I'm concerned, after dealing with 40 years of it, you know.
Sorry, Tony, the Nazis actually took over the American...
Yeah, on the paperclip, didn't they? Under Operation Paperclip, the Nazis took over America's kind of technological base, didn't they?
It's Operation Paperclip, for those that don't know.
Oh. Yeah.
Actually, just after World War II.
Sorry.
Basically, the Russians and the Americans took the Nazi scientists who developed the V1 and V2 rockets, and some took the technology, some took the scientists. I think
that's right. Yeah.
Most of the Americans took the scientists, and the Russians laid claim to a lot of the technology. But basically, that was the beginning of the modern space race, with the Nazis developing it. Von Braun and developing what became NASA basically, and the Russian cosmonaut program and stuff. And it was called Operation Paperclip, where they were brought into the United States, given visas to live there and work for them, and that's how the whole thing started, I guess. And that probably, as Tony was saying, was where the UFOs started to take a greater interest and interaction with us, I think, from World War II onwards.
Tony,
they took a lot of them to White Sands, wasn't it?
Yes, White Sands to work on the V2 rockets that were captured from the Germans. Tony, the vision that you had, the dream, the vision, whatever you want to call it, when they're showing you the clock at 5 minutes to midnight, isn't that the same? Doesn't that conjure the imagery of the so-called doomsday clock?
Yes, it does. You see, what's happening is that governments, Mark, German government, French government, British, Russia, America, they all know that these people exist. They all know that this is not a figment of the imagination. Why a guy on an estate in Yorkshire likes to go to the pub and go out for a drink, why he's getting all this, why am I getting all this? But what they were doing is they were warning that the Ukraine situation was creeping up, was escalating, tone it all down. And it's interesting to note that Russia, who understands the UFO phenomenon, de-escalated because they knew that they were being warned by an outside force that was coming in. They knew. They're not daft. Governments are not stupid. And I think that seems to be that was the situation that was going on. As to who they were communicating to, I'm not sure. There is a possibility that there could be some agency out there in this current time frame now who is secretly communicating with them, because their technological understanding of things is years and years ahead of us. It could certainly alter our understanding and revolutionise our society in some very good ways. But the esoteric cover-up, the occult kind of, I had a big bust-up with a radio station a few months back, actually, Mark. Big row with them over this question of the esoteric and the occult, and the presenters were kind of like, I don't know, it just wasn't right, it just wasn't comfortable, none of it was, but there does appear to be an esoteric cover-up going on of an occult nature behind the scenes that seems to be affecting humanity and the direction it goes in. But it was very worrying what was happening with the Ukraine situation. That was certainly escalating, and it's as if some intervention had gone on. And ever since that point, where this vision has shown the field exactly where they're going to be, as I say, our Air Force has been paying close attention to this area. And you would, wouldn't you, if you were the Air Force, that you would pay close attention. You'd be stupid not to, I do believe.
Mm. Yeah, it's. I mean, yeah. The. I think actually, I mean, we talk about the Air Force quite a lot, but in fact, from my research and leanings, it seems to be a lot to do with the Navy, particularly the U.S. Navy seem to call the shots where it's like the secret space program. In fact, all the Apollo astronauts, apart from the geologist that went to the moon, were all ex-Navy recruits, basically. So although we have the RAF here in the UK, in the United States, it does seem to be the Navy that's behind a lot of the space research and presumably black pod projects as well.
Yeah, well, yes, indeed, on that one. The Navy, the United States Navy, are very big players in this game. I know when I've been out filming that at one point in the proceedings a few years back, I had a US Navy plane fly over me, an electronic warfare one, fly over me. Only a few weeks ago, I had a GR3, one of these Tornadoes jets, bristling with electronic pods, fly only a few hundred feet over me in that field where I was. So yes, the navies of this world are very, very big players. So the US Navy especially in monitoring the UFO situation. The question is, I think, from the people in the UFOs is, are they intelligent enough to get it? Are they intelligent enough to understand the why? I'm not. I think that they've even told me in my interactions with them that their technology, their science is completely beyond me, but their spiritual journey and the spiritual understanding of things is not. I do believe that the blonde, blue-eyed, one of the groups are very real, and I think the biggest secret of all is that we look like them, they look like us. You have the biggest secret of all, which is they look human. Aliens look human. They look a bit like us, but not quite. Takes a bit of adjustment, but that seems to be the overriding kind of secret, that they look like us and we look like them, as cited by an excellent thing on my YouTube channel by Robert Dean called The Assessment, where NATO did this assessment on the UFO situation because they thought Russia was attacking them and Russia thought NATO was attacking them, but it was triggered by UFOs, and they had to understand what was going on. And this actually brings the research where I'm at the moment is Project Hesdelin in Norway, and links to plasma UFOs and links to the fact that we are looking possibly at a biological life system based on plasma that is out there, that is beyond the technology, the kind of like a suggestion by an astrophysicist in Italy, Turismo, I can't remember his name, who indicated from his research in Hesdalen, Norway, in Hesdalen, they've got this big research centre that was looking at strange anomalies. They were looking at UFOs that were of kind of like plasma. And it seemed to be that some of these UFOs, 5% of them, were intelligent. And he came to this startling conclusion, this astrophysicist, that they could be dealing with a civilization that can program plasma like we can program nanotechnology. And that is what I believe in some of the skies above is happening. We're seeing some of these little dot-of-light UFOs, that they are in fact plasma-related, bearing a whole new species and biology system based on plasma. That's where my research is currently at the moment, which I find just fascinating,
That's very interesting. Actually, if you maybe extend your research into spiritualism, and you think, well, why? But as I was doing this chat with Mark and Irene a few weeks ago, we were talking about ectoplasm used in seances, and that's something that comes out of mediums during physical seances, and the spirit world or the other world or whatever you want to call it can direct this ectoplasm to take shape and form. And you're talking about agencies that can shape or manipulate plasma or direct it in some way. It's almost like there's a parallel there somewhere. I haven't quite got the whole thing, but it's almost these higher agencies are somehow able to direct these forces into shapes or beings or whatever they want to call it, I think.
This is absolutely correct. And if you look at if you look as well at, I've forgotten the guy's name, Olivius. Oh, goodness me. I do beg your pardon, I've forgotten his name. Guy in Brazil caused a lot of controversy because he claims that he had communication with a plasma ball, which he claims was indicated was in fact actually the people behind it were blonde, blue-eyed aliens. So he said what is interesting about that is the fact that there's actually an imprint of him on the bed, and there's an imprint of him on the ceiling, slightly different to the one on the bed because he'd been shifted slightly. And he reckoned in his testimony that an energy beam had shifted him out of the room and into their craft. But what was interesting was the analysis done on the cotton fibres of the bed sheets, where this simply was, according to the analysis, you had hot, cold right next to each other. You had thermal, and then you had cold, or you had kind of different kind of combinations, but they were right next to each other, not affecting each other. In other words, it was using an advanced beam technology that was completely beyond us. And just truly amazing the discovery as to what was going on. In other words, we're looking at a technology base that is, according to them, 700 years ahead of us. So even if we go right down the human timeline, we're still not quite there with them yet. They're about 700 years ahead, I would suggest, in terms of technological understanding. What is fascinating me is how that came about, but I'm really talking about the sharp end of my experiences and what goes on. So I don't know if you've got any questions, guys, but that's where I'm at the moment with it.
Well, Tony, let me ask you, you've had these visions with alien beings or different types of creatures. I've got two questions for you. One, have you ever seen one in a fully conscious state of mind, not in a dream or a vision?
I believe I have, yes.
Okay.
I believe that I have, yes, indeed. I understand. Yes, I do believe that has happened in a town somewhere in the UK. A most bizarre incident with a man, and it was most bizarre. All I will say is I was stood somewhere ordering kind of like a cup of coffee. I turned around to see this guy stood there beaming at me I can only describe it as a black hat and a black suit with a black tie. And he was smiling at me as if he knew me. And I nearly said, "You're not from round here, are you?" He didn't say a word to me. He just smiled at me. And it just did not look right. That's happened on a couple of occasions where a trained eye like myself and say, that stands out. That's not quite right. So, yes, I do believe that has happened. I do believe that we could actually have a conscious interaction with the blonde, blue-eyed type. I believe that certainly could happen. Yes, that's on the cards. That might be coming.
Do you feel then that these beings, do you feel they're extraterrestrial, or do you think that at least some of them we may be dealing with a different type of being that's more, for lack of a better term, interdimensional? rather than extraterrestrial.
A combination of the two there, Mark. You've got dimensional ET. You've got and then you've got the kind of the ET that looks similar to us from other planets. And then you've got the elements of human beings who are dimensional, but in a future timeline somewhere that may have come off our timeline. The stuff that science fiction is made of happens in real life in a very shocking way. What is troubling, as I'll stress again, is the level of stuff that contactees are exposed to is very ethically troubling, and it will remain so. This will trouble the governments of this world a great deal in the years ahead. Even though they're in public denial over it, it will trouble them a great deal.
I'm just wondering, actually, the contactees, as you're saying, and they get in trouble by their visitations or experiences. It's almost like they're like governments or ET or maybe both are picking out random selections, if you like, of people from different societies to expose them to these things, to test out people's reactions about how will they, in other words, how will the whole world take it if ET was made known, if there was a full disclosure? And by taking small pockets of people from different societies, and they say we're from planet X or whatever, they're gauging a reaction to see how the ordinary man or woman or child on the street would react to their presence before a full disclosure, if that ever happens, would be made available. And by testing out the water, so to speak, on small pockets of humanity, I think they're trying to gauge how we're going to cope with it.
Yes and no. Although the situation, what I see, the landscape, what I see is radically different to what's written about. There is a disclosure going on, and I do believe it's not via government. I believe it's via public, it's via scientists, it's via people like myself. It could even happen to you, Neil, Mark, Irene. It could happen. So there is that element of disclosure going on, but there's also an element of cover-up going on as well, because I do strongly believe that some of these ET intelligences are involved in a cover-up of some description to protect their business. Business is business. In real life, it's kind of like it's not all spiritual and airy-fairy. In real life, business is business with them. And there seems to be a dynamic among them all, from the landscape I see, based on 40 years' experience, a dynamic of Russia, America, that Cold War type dynamic among them. This is quite a thing to witness, but there does appear to be that going on. And if you had those two polarities, and by the way, I'm not saying America's got a halo around it, but if you have the two polarity of Russia, the bad guy, and America, the good guy, you have that polarity among them of Russia, the good alien, the bad alien. So the question is, therefore, I have reason to suspect that some party somewhere that is not human is responsible for this for this cover-up, responsible for keeping humanity in the dark. It's interesting. I interviewed Laura Eisenhower for my radio show. She gets a lot of stick, but it was interesting listening to her regarding her great-granddad, Dwight Eisenhower. It's interesting because he became ill on 3 occasions because of the pressure and stress of knowing what was going on with the UFO situation. According to Laura, he had 3 heart attacks. I didn't know that, due to the pressure of understanding, according to her family, due to the pressure of understanding this situation that was going on. I don't think we'll be happy until Russia and America and NATO are all at war with each other and cities in Europe are flattened. Then we'll all be happy then. Because at the moment we've got this dynamic going on of Russia, America, Europe, a resurgent Russia, possible war footing, movement of troops. There's some football issue that's moving the net again that we don't. We see the net move, but we don't see the football causing it. And that's kind of like we're getting there into a very dangerous area of contact and UFO research in this subject. So that where I'm at the moment is actually possibly eventually just walking away, because I think it can get too much. It really can. It can just get hair-raising. And when you don't know the reason why, it can get very sad. It's a very lonely existence. I wish I could say that it was fantastic, but my experiences can be just absolutely hair-raising.
Well, Tony, we have come to the end of the show. We're running out of time, but what a brilliant discussion.
Did you enjoy it, Mark? I know you're not an easy man to please, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, I know.
You're not, are you? You smell the BS a mile. You're not.
I hold that ruler firmly, waiting to crack knuckles.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of like come in if you feel something's not. I know this with you. You're not an easy man to please. So I'm glad. No. I'm glad that you enjoyed the conversation.
Well, we are wrapping up. Now, Tony,